Alrighty, first and foremost, I didn't necessarily learn how to use any of my programs professionally. It was all, how do I rotate? How do I glitch? How do I add so and so and so and so and so? Google is your best friend. And so are the thousands of artists and creatists? And so are the thousands of artists and creators that came before you, to pave the path of learning how to rotate in MS Paint. So, if you're a lot more program savvy than I am, please feel free to tell me if there's an easier way to do the things I do in the programs I've been using, which are mainly Premiere Pro and Clip Studio Paint, and I'm hoping to one day learn the basics of Blender and After Effects, but we'll get there eventually. So, today's video is something I've been meaning to make for a long time, a video that goes over my process. Since starting this whole animatic PMV thing, I've always been asked questions and comments in chat about how I go about the steps of conjuring up the idea all the way to uploading it on YouTube. I even had a community post Q&A that was meant for a 50k special video. That didn't happen, but it's happening now. This video is also a double whammy, as XPPen has reached out to me once more in collaboration, and I'm reviewing their Deco Pro XLW drawing tablet Gen 2. Say that 10 times fast. I'm not entirely sure if I'll be posting this video before or after my most recent animatic, but I will be drawing the rest of said animatic using this tablet. And from there, we'll see how it goes. The video I'm going to use for this example is my most recent one. It's my Spider-Verse PMV, all about Miguel O'Hara and X. Alright. So, let's lay down the groundwork. The first thing I need is a spark. And not just any spark, it has to be brain rot, an obsession. For those who know me, I am extremely normal about Mr. Spider-Man 2099, I promise. No sense of obsession here, not at all. I do not know what Archive of Our Own is, at all, I promise you. Let me fully reiterate, I am not a professional at any of this. This entire process is what I've just been doing for myself, and if it works for you, that's great. If it doesn't, that's too bad. Nah, I'm kidding. If you find any part of this process helpful, then there you go, whatever works for you. Anyways, obsession, yes. So, most of my videos, if not all, were made with this weird or random spark of energy. For example, my first pass-reading video was made in a day with no breaks, right after I finished the book. Which makes sense, it's a very short video, but that should somehow sum up the mentality towards working on these things. Thinking about it now, I rarely think to myself that, okay, I like this thing, so I'll make an animatic. No, it's more like, this song? These lyrics? Then I got the most recent obsession and I make them kiss and then pop, a new project is born. Then all it takes is one long-ass car ride or one moment of zoning out in the middle of work for that sweet golden zone to hit. From then on, it's a good time of repeating the song until I kind of get a good frame of what the visuals are, just sitting there. At this point, it's only a few real key moments that are set in stone. These are usually the crescendos or the climaxes of the song, and from there, I'm doodling in a sketchbook, the barest form of ideas. Even at this point, there are gaps in the storyboards where I haven't exactly pinpointed the visuals that lead up to the next key visual. But that's okay, as long as there's some form, the skeleton of an idea finally gaining some nerve endings and organs. This part is so crucial because it's so hard to translate the timing of the song to whatever is happening in the storyboard, so I'll usually chuck in a lyric where something starts or ends. If there aren't any lyrics, then I'll add a timestamp for the song, so like in 12 seconds or in 2 seconds, this shows up or this shows up. I've tried to do it with other projects, but I have yet to know if it truly works. So now, the solidifying of moments. It's kind of the storyboard part 2, but really like solidifying what exactly is happening with each bit of the song. This point in time is also where I tend to recreate things entirely, but keep in mind though, I'm going to reiterate again, the process is constantly changing. Now, the next step is something I've only recently put into my process, and that's color scripts. I've always known that in animated sequences and movies, it's always a really important part of the whole process, but it wasn't up until this project that I actually sat down and made one. Before then, I usually didn't really care. I just threw up whatever looked good frame by frame. Or sometimes an entire video or big chunks of the video would have like one color palette. But after buying the Across the Spider-Verse art book and just seeing it all, the variants of colors they could have used and how different it would have made the scenes, I figured I'd give it a try. And I think from now on, I'm going to start using them a lot more. There's an ease of knowing what color is intended for the next, and it allows you to leave in little color motifs sprinkled about. For example, I utilized yellow as a reoccurring color in this animatic. I intended for yellows and oranges to represent some sort of comfort to Miguel. By the way, this is spoilers. If If you haven't seen Across the Spider-Verse at this point, that's kind of on you. You're missing out. Anyway, yes, what was I saying? I'm not sure how well I executed it, but I intended for the yellows and oranges to represent some sort of comfort to Miguel. I wanted to make a noticeable contrast to the artificial comfort of watching his family through holograms, alongside with the comfort of the outside world, the potential of healing himself, which is actively barred or separated from him through window frames or being constantly drawn back to the holograms. I think the moment where I really wanted it to hit is where the pure sterile white of when Gabriella eventually disappears bleeds into an eggshell white, into warm whites as he recounts the memories he never had raising his daughter. The yellow stops feeling natural and eventually starts bleeding into that artificial hue as it zooms out and Miguel is back in his office, and we return to watching the universes through a screen. Saying it out loud off my script feels wild. That kind of stings, not gonna lie. Anyway, so, color scripts, yes. Color scripts help a hell of a lot with coming up with stuff like this. Plus, it saves time having to think less of what palettes I'm chucking onto the next frame. And then comes to drawing the actual frames. So, now, a segment in between. Here's where I'll talk about how it felt using the XPPen tablet, because at the end of the day, I finished the rest of the animatic using said tablet. I already started like 5 or 6 scenes from the get-go using my usual tablet, and then swapped around here. First and foremost, the very first thing I noticed while painting these scenes, by the way, if it wasn't already obvious, my intentions were to try and replicate Miguel's backstory of him and his daughter. The first thing I noticed when it came to these scenes was the texture. I am a big textury individual, and the Deco Pro surface feels a lot like paper, and that's only on top of the white pen nibs they provide in their pen case, which, by the way, look how cool that is. It's sleek and professional and has a very noticeable click. Because my setup is quite stationary, I rarely need to disconnect everything, but the tablet does have a 10-hour battery life, as it is also Bluetooth, so ta-ta to having to manage your cables. The surface also sleeks down on the edge to rest your wrist, which, if you don't know, little things like where you rest your wrist really matter in the long run. Take care of your tendons, guys. Because there are some aspects to the art style I'm looking to replicate, specifically some very line weight reliant styles, the fact that the stylus has a 16K pressure level worked wonders. I adored how easy and respondent the pen felt. Speaking of line art though, actually no, speaking of this art style in general, Gigi Cavanago, I have no idea if I'm saying that right. Gigi Cavanago's art? I'm not gonna lie to you, I actually cried looking through it because it's just so beautiful. The biggest shout out to Gigi Cavanago and Damien Fernandez Gomez, and honestly anyone else who worked on it, for their work on Miguel's animated sequence. I can't even begin to explain how much it inspired me. I've been going through this strange journey of falling in love with media all over again, and just look at the colors, the line weight, the texture. I don't even know where to begin or end. There's just so much skill and love and art out there, and I just want to consume all of it. Back on track. With drawing the actual frames, I know it makes more sense to finish all the frames and then get to editing, but for me personally, I just need to see how it looks before moving on to the next frame, so maybe I'll polish a frame or two and then chuck it on the Premiere timeline. Here's where new things constantly change and get added, maybe some sparks, dust particles, whichever I do to calibrate the timing, but from here on out, it's a lot of back and forth. That moves us into the next part of the XPPen I wanted to talk about. So this version of the Deco Pro comes along with its own little shortcut tool, the X Remote Control. It's got a scroll, a middle button, and 10 other shortcut keys. As always, I took a bit of fiddling and playing around to get used to, but we got there in the end. My favorite thing about it probably had to be the switch button for the middle of the scroll. It would change the function of the scroll for rotation, zooming, or even the brush size. Now, on to editing. Firstly, I always gotta chuck the music down. Gotta make sure all the parts I want are there, edit any bits and all. I don't usually edit the audio, but on the rare occasions I do, it's the first thing on the timeline. Since the drawing process and the editing process are always worked side by side, the final editing stages are where I go everything once again, just to see if there's a little bit of gouache and blur that needs to be added or looks good, keyframing things to move from one side to the other end, or even adding dust particles in the air, just for the ambience of it all. Then lastly, any form of text, from the title screens to the ending credits, where I put the title of the music down or where I put my patrons for the outro. This is where I make little title screens and bada bing bada boom, finished. All that's left is uploading it with all the details and credits for any used songs or characters, and there you go, you're done. I think one thing that I always struggle with is putting stuff in the description. I don't know what to say. I I kind of just word vomit. Overall, the process was something that took a lot of trial and error, and to this day, I'm still learning the ins and outs of uploading things, or even finding a steady balance of finding the time to edit and upload. Drawing with the Deco Pro, while it took some fine-tuning, was a fine enough experience. The most trouble I had was calibrating the drive and the X remote control with my preferred Clip Studio shortcuts. Overall, yes, the texture was my favorite aspect of it. I find that any surface with a form of resistance when it comes to drawing makes such a big impact on how I feel when I draw. Hence why my traditional art and digital art sometimes feel like it's been kind of like drawn by completely different individuals. I mean, I guess from my perspective anyway. If you've got the space and prefer larger work areas, especially to prevent any form of strain on your wrists and hands, the A3 size is a great option. It's the one I was given. But for ease of travel, I'd say that the A4 or even the A5 makes things a whole lot easier, especially if your visual area might be smaller, such as phones or iPads, which are the other options the Deco LW can connect to. And if you're interested in the product, feel free to look at the links below and use the code Kuoki5 to get 5% off the product. I guess at the end of the day, the best advice or thing I want to leave you with is your work does not have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the best thing since sliced bread. If anything, when you put your work out there, it's a precedence to continue growing. And putting your foot down and leaving your mark as soon as you can, regardless if it's professional or not, makes looking back on all the work that you've eventually made even more amazing. People never stop growing. People never stop learning. And it's a constant experience with ups and downs. I hope you've enjoyed this ramble and review of a video, and thank you to XPPen for sending me another one of your products to review. Hopefully, I've been able to communicate my thought process to you all. It's something I've been genuinely meaning to share for a while, and I'm glad that I've finally gotten the chance to. I hope to see you all for more, but till then, stay hydrated, stay safe, and make good decisions. Bye bye!